Good morning. Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We are going to start a new study today, and we're going to begin a study of the resurrection accounts in the Bible, Old and New Testament, the accounts of resurrections from the dead. Now, there are 2 ways to count those, and I'm going to be emphasizing the 7 resurrection accounts, Old and New Testament, where an individual is raised from the dead by someone else, by another person, another human. There are 10 accounts of bodily resurrection. There are those 7 that we think of and that I'm thinking of as resurrection accounts. 2 are by Elijah, 2 are Old Testament before Jesus, 2 are New Testament after Jesus, and then Jesus performs 3. There's symmetry in that number, the number 7. 2 Old Testament, 2 New Testament, 2 by prophets, 2 by apostles. The apostles and the prophets are lumped together as a group in the New Testament, as representing the communication of God. We're built upon the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, Ephesians chapter 2, 20 through 22. So we have 2 prophets, 2 apostles, and then Jesus himself. The number of 7 is the number of completion, the number of perfection, the number of, so it's a biblical number. We have 2, Elijah and Elisha in the Old Testament, Jesus performing 3 right in the middle, transitioning between the old law and the new. We have the time of Jesus' life on earth, we have 3, and then after that we have 2 in the book of Acts, Peter and Paul. I think it's significant that we have 2 old, 2 new, and Jesus in the middle with 3. 3 is a significant number, isn't it, in the Bible? And 7 is a significant number in the Bible. I think there's even symmetry to the names of the men who perform the resurrections, because their names start with the same letter in Hebrew and in Greek and in English. Elijah and Elisha, and we know how closely associated they are in the Old Testament. Peter and Paul in the book of Acts, the 2 dominant characters in the book of Acts, other than, of course, the Holy Spirit, who is the main character of the book of Acts. Anyway, there aren't just 7 random accounts, and they're not just accounts that are important. The 7 accounts fit together as a unit because they are 7, and because they are ordered in such a way. They really do connect the gospel, the time of Jesus, with what went before and what's going to happen afterwards. And that's why I think it's important to study the 7 resurrection accounts as a group, as a unit of resurrection stories. And I do think the resurrection stories are a unit that fit together. We're going to see common actions, common themes throughout, and we're going to take time with the the resurrection miracles of Jesus. We're going to spend 4 or 5 sessions on the raising of Lazarus. We're going to spend at least 2 sessions on the raising of Jairus' daughter. So we're going to take the time to really delve in to these resurrection accounts, these resurrection events, particularly the ones that Jesus performs. The 7 resurrection accounts from the Bible are Elijah raising the widow's son in 1 Kings chapter 17, Elisha raising the son of the Shunammite woman in 2 Kings chapter 4. Then we have the 3 from Jesus' ministry. The first is the raising of the widow of Nain's son. We know this is chronologically likely first because we only have this in Luke's gospel, and it happens before the raising of Jairus' daughter in Luke's gospel, which occurs the next chapter over in Luke chapter 8. So we're going to study the widow of Nain's son, the raising of Jairus' daughter. This is recorded in all 3 synoptic gospels. We're going to focus on Mark's version, but we're going to look at all 3 versions. And then the raising of Lazarus, which is the 7th sign Jesus performs in John's gospel. We're going to talk about it as the 7th sign. It is quite literally the climax of his public ministry. It is the great event, the great miraculous event that brings to an end his public ministry before the events of the end. the betrayal, the arrest, the death, the burial, and the resurrection occur. So we're going to take plenty of time to look at that because it is that significant an event in the gospel accounts. And then in the book of Acts, the main characters, the two apostles who dominate the events of the book of Acts are Peter, up through chapter 10, 11, 12, and then Paul, and they overlap. Their stories overlap. But Peter is roughly the first half, not the first half chapter-wise, but the first part, and then the second part is really about Paul. And Peter raises Tabitha from the dead, and that's such an important moment in the history of the church, and it connects directly in several ways with Jesus raising Jairus' daughter. And of course, Peter was there for that, one of the three who were. And so we're going to take time to look at that. And then there's the raising of Eutychus, which I love. It really isn't the emphasis. It's kind of like a postscript of what happens. But in a sense, it has more power in the story because it is just delivered so in such a matter-of-fact way. Now, there are three other resurrection events that we're going to spend time talking about, and this is a nod to those of you who over the years have said, well, what about this? What about that? And I've had to clarify that these seven fit together as a unit, and they just are a unit, these seven resurrection accounts. But we also have three other resurrection events, I'll call them, and they don't fit this mold that these other seven fall into. And we're going to look at them too. We're going to take a couple of days to look at Ezekiel chapter 37 and the event in the Valley of Dry Bones when they are enlivened. And then we're going to look at what happens at the moment of crucifixion when Matthew tells us in Matthew chapter 27 that the graves were open and people walked around, the dead walked around. We'll look at that and the significance of that. And then we're going to take some time to look at Jesus' own resurrection. In fact, that's going to transition us to a study of Jesus' resurrection to the next thing that I want us to talk about, are the resurrection accounts in the gospel. So that's going to lead us to our next topic. So that's what we're going to do over the next few days. Next time we're together, we're going to be in 1 Kings chapter 17. So read that if you'd like, and we'll look there next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.